It's something that I believe in strongly.
Yeah.
I feel like I owe it to myself and
Mhm.
my own development and
Mhm.
my own lived experience to really
Mhm.
be that voice. And it's never really been taken, nothing I've said, however controversial, has ever really been met with any hostility. The
Yeah.
most that will happen is people will disagree and they'll say, I disagree with you and we're going to do this anyway.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Envisionaire podcast with Nicole Ningyuan. This is a podcast where we explore everyday topics, share our experiences, and help turn life's challenges into life's opportunities. Let's get ready to envision living our best lives. On today's episode, we have Bianca Stewart, who will be discussing the topic of standing in your truth. Now, Bianca is a dear friend of mine who I've known for several years. She was my former supervisor when I was a trainee solicitor. She is someone who I have admired since the moment I met her, has had such a positive impact on my professional career as a lawyer. She has served as a role model, uplifting myself and other women around her. She always stands up for herself and stands up for principles and values that she holds dear. And I think that she has been a trailblazer for effecting change within the legal profession. So it is with great pleasure that I have Bianca Stewart on the Envisionaire podcast. So welcome, Bianca.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm so excited and nervous to be here.
I know, but you have nothing to be nervous about. This is all exciting. We're all positive vibes here. So don't worry. Now, as I mentioned, I really wanted to invite you in to speak about standing in your truth, which I think you do so well. I thought it would be helpful for our listeners if you could provide a bit of background, like your family growing up. I think it'd be very interesting to hear about the beginnings, let's say, of your
Sure.
experience. So could you tell us a bit about your family? And
Yeah. So my mother was born in Iran in the 60s. My grandparents left Iran just prior to the revolution. My grandmother is Welsh. If I take it even further back, they met
yeah.
in a hospital in Wales, and then my granddad and my grandmother eloped to Iran from Wales. And then, well, for my granddad, obviously he was originally Iranian, so it's kind of going back home. He set up
Okay.
a practice there. He was a doctor. Had my mum, had my aunties, then decided they wanted to raise the children in England, in the
Yeah.
UK. So came back to the UK, spent some time in Wales, finally settled in North London, where my mum spent most of her kind of later childhood years. She met my dad, who was born in Willesden, Northwest London, which is actually where I live now, funnily enough.
Yeah.
And then they had me.
Wow.
And my dad's parents are both Jamaican, part of
Mhm.
the Windrush generation. Yeah, so I grew up, went to a primary school. But it's funny, both of my schools, so primary school and secondary school, were actually very, very diverse.
Yeah.
There were a lot of mixed race children in my primary school, which was in West
Okay.
London. And then
Mhm.
my secondary school, which was in central London, had everyone from all over London and from
Okay.
all over the world, actually, and all different backgrounds. And so I never really felt, I obviously very much was aware of my heritage
Mhm.
and very proud of it. Spent a lot of
Mhm.
time with my Iranian granddad. Every weekend we'd be at his with my cousins, but then would also go on holiday to Jamaica to see my Jamaican grandparents, which was amazing. But it was kind of only once I started university that I really started to feel that there were
Mhm.
assumptions made about me that weren't
Mm.
necessarily always positive, which I don't think I felt in school. So that was quite an interesting experience.
And so from what I'm hearing is you had such a really nice experience in elementary school. Do you feel like you had mentors or teachers, or was it just your peer experience, or even at home where you felt like it really built your sense of confidence?
Yeah, I think it's just the teachers. If you're a teacher, you have to make quite a conscious effort to obviously you have your choice of schools that you can work at, and the
Mhm.
schools that I went to were not known for being the easiest schools to work at. I mean, as students, at neither of the schools were we completely off the rails and super naughty, but we were quite challenging. There was a lot of attitude. My secondary school was a girls' school, and the girls obviously had a lot of attitude at various points and bits of drama here and there. But I really felt that the teachers had made a conscious decision that they wanted to work in those environments and work with young people who were from inner city London, didn't necessarily have all the opportunities in the world, but wanted to make a difference in their lives.
Yeah.
And actually, as a result, they didn't put any restrictions in our heads about what we could achieve. They were very much always looking for ways that they could uplift us. So some of our teachers were part of a program called Teach First, which I think they have in Canada as well, actually, maybe.
Do they?
Or maybe
I
in
don't
the
know.
US, they definitely have it.
Okay,
Which is
yeah.
where some of the most talented students in the country from like the top universities, typically Oxbridge and some others, have an opportunity to basically do teacher training, which the government funds for a number of years, and go into schools, quote unquote tough schools, do that for a while, and then they get supported into a fantastic graduate role later. But the
Oh,
idea
wow.
being that they get, the students benefit because we get some of the best minds in the country.
Yeah, yeah,
But then
yeah.
they also get the opportunity of really making a real life difference. And they were some of the best teachers we ever had because they were like, are you guys considering Oxbridge? You guys should be looking, you should be aiming for the top. I'm going to organize a school trip, a year trip to Cambridge. We'll meet my former college tutor and you can see what it's like. I mean, that was
That's
amazing in terms
amazing.
of inspiring us. Yes, we
Yes.
got there and we didn't see anyone who looked like us, but that's okay because someone had made the effort to take us there. And
Yes.
we'd met, 3 or 4 tutors who were all super excited about meeting us and really just made such a difference and really was very encouraging.
That's
And for
amazing.
the first time, I think we were having a number of people in our school actually applying to Oxbridge, which
Wow.
was a game changer.
Yeah, 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 that
Yeah.
can be. So those sorts of experiences, like
Yeah.
where you're almost given insight into or a potential vision into what could be something new and exciting.
Having someone just say, you should be applying.
Yeah,
And
believing
like,
in you almost. Yeah,
I believe in
yeah.
you and I care about you enough that I'm going to take you there so that you can see that this is a legitimate option for you.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's amazing. Do you know, we had this saying my dad used to say, reach for the stars so that if you miss, you land on top of the coconut trees.
Oh, I love that.
Have you heard of that? Or is
I
that...
haven't, but I love
Okay.
it.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing all of that. That's really given a little bit of insight also into your experience and your background, which I think is a really good segue into the next part of your life, which is working as a lawyer. Did you always want to be a lawyer? And how did you get into that? Did you have family also working in the law?
No, none. No lawyers in my family, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It was more a case, if I'm honest, one of the opportunities some of those teachers introduced us to was an opportunity to do a city internship. And they'd
Okay.
collaborated with a charity who were basically giving inner city youth the chance to taste the city life and be
Okay.
inspired to consider city life as opposed to what a lot of us were considering, which is joining the media. Mostly because it's just where we saw other people that look
Yeah.
like ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with joining the media, but this was nice just to see another
Yeah.
potential career path.
Yeah.
And I met a few people and I was like, wow, these people make a lot of money. This looks like a great option.
Yeah.
And then I went on an open day. And it wasn't necessarily I was committed to becoming a lawyer, but when I met people, it's like, oh, I like this place. Like everyone's really nice, and this seems like a great place to work, and the work they do seems interesting. And so that was actually the only law firm that I applied for, and I happened to get in. So I
Wow.
can't say I've been dreaming about my corporate law career for the last however many years, because that definitely wasn't the case. It was just really.
I don't know many people who are necessarily doing that from like age 5. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, and law is one of those things, particularly city law, that you kind of turn around, and so many years have passed that you kind of find yourself you're kind of in that route now, and you're kind of climbing up the ladder, and it all moves very quickly. And I found a niche that I enjoy, but yeah, at the beginning I was kind of panicking as to whether or not that was the right decision. But yeah, we're here now, and we're happy.
You've made it. You've made it.
Yeah.
One of the questions I had, did you have any positive role models or sponsors who helped you along that way?
So when I moved in-house, I had a really great manager. My manager was extraordinary in that she was a fantastic lawyer, or is a fantastic lawyer, really supportive. And I think in law, sometimes the pastoral element of managing someone can get very lost because it can be a very high stress role, a high stress industry. And
Yeah.
so the focus is always on the output and, how perfect is your work and
Yeah.
have you done everything you need to do, which obviously the focus should be on work. I mean, it is work.
Yeah.
But whereas in other industries, there's a real emphasis on the pastoral side and how is that person improving? Are you focusing on
Yeah.
giving them development opportunities? It's
Yeah.
very much law is this is the ladder that you're on and tick this, tick that, and eventually maybe you'll go up. And if you're in-house, it's slightly more ambiguous because actually, is there a space for you to step up into? Because if the person above you hasn't retired or resigned, you may not get there. But my manager was pushing me to develop myself and really saying, I want to give you management opportunities. I want to give you the opportunity to try this type of work.
Wow.
I know you said you enjoyed it, and let's give
Yeah.
you some KPIs that are, one, achievable, but two, will challenge you enough that at the end of
Yes.
the year, you'll feel like you've achieved something and you've become a better lawyer. But her just taking that very proactive interest in my career development just gave me such a great opportunity to learn and also really helped me to develop as a lawyer. And in doing so, the key thing is it gave me confidence, and
Yes.
it's that confidence that has really, I think, been the biggest game changer in my career. So so as I said, not really a mentor-mentee relationship, but was the first person that I felt really just invested in me, and that
Yeah.
just changed the game, I think.
Yeah. And it's so important. I mean, I
Yes.
100%, I think that you're absolutely right when you said that gave you the confidence, and that was a game changer because
Yeah.
it is that confidence, being able to feel like I belong here and I
Yeah.
am valued. So
I felt like I was at school again, but it's that similar experience of people that believe in you.
mm,
And that's really nice, and that makes you feel that you're standing in a place where you can be confident enough to take a risk and say things that other people might disagree with, or
yeah.
challenge someone else, whether it's from a legal perspective or from a other work environment perspective.
Yeah. From my experience, because obviously when I worked with you and you were my supervisor, you were constantly building me up. Maybe you paid it forward because you helped to build my confidence exponentially. So I wonder, and maybe we've already done it just by having this conversation, but maybe you could tell our listeners the value of doing that and what you've seen in people, how you've seen that impact when you just invest in them. Because now you are the
Yeah.
person investing rather than being invested in the same
Yeah.
way. Does that make sense? Like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Um, it's hard to know how. I mean, I know how I was personally affected by having someone invest in me in the ways I just explained. But even if I look at it from a pure professional perspective, when I invest in someone, the output is better. Because if you give someone the confidence to try things and you give them the reassurance that, why don't you try this thing? It might be hard, but let's discuss it. Feel free to disturb me. Let's have as many chats as you need to have. That person automatically feels a sense of belief in themselves, even if they've never done the thing before, because they feel like, oh, so and so believes in me. I'm going to give it a try. You've also
Yeah.
given them access and free rein to interrupt you and to come and
Yes.
speak to you.
Yeah.
And that always produces better work because now someone can actually ask you questions rather than spending hours deliberating over something that they just have no idea how to solve themselves. So now
Yes.
you're no longer wasting time. They're now having to think critically about the questions that they want to ask you, the bits that they already do understand, and figure out where their gaps are. They're learning. You're able to give them the knowledge. It's very hard to just explain to someone how to do something in a vacuum. You really need them to kind of do the thinking and figure out where the gaps are. And then it's so easy for you to then come in, plug in that information that you have, and then everyone is winning. So there's
Yes.
that practical benefit, which is that the output is better.
Yeah.
But I just also think there's such a nice relationship that builds. And that's not just necessarily people that report to you, but
Yeah.
also your kind of colleagues. So currently I work quite closely with HR,
Yeah.
and it's really nice being able to work with my HR colleagues and
Yeah.
sort of say to them, this is the reason why when
Yeah.
you ask me this, it's not as simple as X, Y, and Z. And actually, let's sit down and talk about the legal side of it so then you understand the legal framework. That will enable you to do your job better. We can then have a more fruitful discussion. Actually, that's still a work benefit. But I don't know.
But
It's
maybe
having those conversations. Sometimes I think it's given me opportunity to just build a close relationship with that person.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
And
then
just feel
I feel
comfortable,
confident to
like,
ask them.
yeah,
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 it's a nicer environment. You
to
can kind
work
of talk about
in.
non-work
Yeah,
things as
yeah,
well,
yeah.
and
Well,
yeah,
especially in this environment where we're constantly just like working all the time, spend more hours with work colleagues than your own family sometimes. So
absolutely,
be able to
absolutely,
have an environment that's not toxic and
yeah,
not one where it's super distressing and it's actually just collegial and
yeah.
collaborative and there's good output. I think that all makes sense. So really good reasons in itself.
Yeah.
So
I also think when dealing with junior lawyers, and obviously you were a junior lawyer, Nicole, but you weren't junior in your career. Like
yeah,
you were well established in your career and
thank
then
you.
decided to do something different. So technically junior,
I was
but
an
not
old
really junior.
person.
No, no, so that
No,
definitely
just
came out
joking.
wrong. You know what I mean.
I know, just
But
joking.
when dealing with junior lawyers, there's an understanding, an acknowledgement that law firms aren't necessarily traditionally the place where you can ask all the questions
Mhm,
and have this open, transparent relationship with your superiors all the time. Obviously,
mhm,
sometimes you can, it all
mhm.
depends. But I think that it's very important to instill that confidence and that practice of asking questions as well. Because I think that if I had had more confidence in
Yeah.
asking questions during my time in private practice, during my training, I think it would have made such a difference to my
Mhm,
overall experience and my overall development. And actually, my development in my first in house role, I learned so much more than
mhm.
all the years in private practice. And it's
Wow.
purely because I
Mhm.
had that safe space to ask the questions and
Wow.
have a chat and say, hey, I'm thinking this. What do you think? And I think, if you can go into private practice with that mindset and with that practice
Yeah.
of how to really use your superiors to help
Mm.
you answer the
Mhm.
question or do the work, but in a way that they don't feel like you're being lazy and not bothering to answer it yourself, that can actually transform the entire experience and make you look like
Yeah.
a really good junior lawyer.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Well, I hope that is helpful to not only lawyers, but also people in other fields where that element of being more approachable and fostering an environment that is collaborative and consensus
Absolutely.
building will be helpful.
Yeah.
We need to talk about standing in your truth. Although I have to say, I think it's been threaded throughout the whole conversation, this idea of being who you are and standing in your truth and being authentic and speaking up and empowering other people to do the same. So, how do you find the strength and the courage to do that in certain situations, particularly where you might feel a sense of less empowered, for example, less confident? How do you maintain a sense of integrity and preserving your values or speaking up if you see something that you don't think is right happening? How do you find that strength? And can you give time where you have done that, particularly in a situation where maybe you weren't as confident, let's say?
So the point around standing up and speaking your truth is easier when you're confident. So when you're confident in an environment, obviously for me, it becomes very naturally because I already feel as though my voice has weight and
Yes.
I feel as though even if someone disagrees with me, they're not going to dismiss me and actually they'll consider what I have to say. And it's all very positive, even if the outcome is not necessarily what I would have chosen.
Yes. Yes.
And that's again one of the other reasons why it's really important to help build that confidence in your colleague and your junior colleagues in particular.
Mhm.
And again, this is something that is built over time. When you're in an environment where you don't have that confidence, there's probably tied in with that an element of you not necessarily bringing your whole self to that particular environment or to that job or to that
Yeah.
workplace. And so I've worked in environments where I've not felt confident enough to bring my whole self to that place. And I found it quite crippling. I
Mhm.
found it mentally, emotionally, physically exhausting.
Yes.
And my work output has suffered as a result. It kind of breaks down your confidence a little bit
Yes.
and or a lot.
Yeah.
And so all the things I discussed previously around, being confident enough to ask questions and say,
Yeah.
I think this, what do you think? Am I on the
Yes.
right path? All
Yeah.
of that goes because you just don't have any confidence because you're already focusing so hard on trying to be the person you think that person wants you to be and present in a way that is either acceptable or kind of like
Yes.
everybody else.
Yeah.
And because I know how debilitating that is for me, and debilitating is quite a strong word, but I think actually for me
Agree.
it's
Yes.
quite
I
accurate.
agree. Mhm.
I know how debilitating that is. So even if I'm in an environment where actually I haven't had time to build that confidence in the subject matter, or I don't know much about the company itself, or I don't even necessarily have a relationship with the leadership team yet, but it's something that I want to challenge them on. There's something that's come up that I disagree with. I almost remind myself how debilitating it was to not be myself in
Yes.
previous roles.
Yeah.
And I just think I would rather say something and deal with the consequences of saying something, which will never be that terrible,
Yeah.
than not say anything and spend days, weeks, months, potentially years after being
Yes.
consumed with why I didn't say the thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And that,
100%.
and I remember just remembering how much of myself I didn't bring to previous roles and how
Yeah.
much I regretted it and how much it affected me really is the driver to speak up for myself or speak up for others on something that I believe in strongly. If I
Yeah.
don't believe in it that strongly, I might just throw it out there in a cheeky email, but I'm not sure about this, but you know, blah, blah, blah. But if it's something that I believe in strongly,
Yeah.
I feel like I owe it to myself and
Mhm.
my own development and
Mhm.
my own lived experience to really
Mhm.
be that voice. And it's never really been taken, nothing I've said, however controversial, has ever really been met with any kind of hostility.
Good.
The
Yeah.
most that will happen is people will disagree and they'll say, you know, I disagree with you and we're going to do this anyway. But I've lost nothing because I've
Yes.
actually, in fact, I've gained because now, you know, I've actually added to my confidence because I said it and it wasn't
Yeah.
dismissed. It wasn't
Yes.
necessarily agreed with, and that's okay. But
Yeah.
no one responded and said, that was an absolutely awful suggestion, Bianca, get out of the room. Um, and so actually, it's only ever been a win-win, and that has empowered me to step forward and speak out even more.
It's amazing.
I,
That
I
is
hope that makes
amazing.
sense.
Yes, I think that's such a great lesson. This for anyone who has, and I felt this 100%. Like when you were saying this idea of debilitation, and for me, it's almost a betrayal of who I was by not
100%,
standing up, right?
100%.
And
Yes,
that's the worst feeling. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it because I think, how could you betray yourself in that way when
exactly.
you the value of yourself and your self worth? Because by not speaking up, what you're saying is you're not worth being heard. And I think
Exactly.
that is what we all need to really try and work on. We need to try being kinder to ourselves and empower ourselves and say, actually,
Absolutely.
you know what? Like exactly like you said, like I have nothing to lose, only to gain by saying what I think. That is so good, Bianca. I love that so much. And I hope the listeners get that same inspiration that I just got from that. We're moving on to the final segment, which is our Envisionaire questionnaire. Okay, so this is
Okay.
a exciting feature of every podcast that we do, and we ask guests to answer questions from past, looking back, the present, and the future.
Okay.
Okay, so with regard to the past, if you could give any advice to your 15-year-old self, remember those years?
Yeah.
For me, they were very awkward. Anyway, what would you
Same.
say?
Interesting, because my 15-year-old self was probably the most, I mean, it was a very awkward period. But I went to a girls' school, so I was somewhat shielded by physical awkwardness.
Okay.
But I was very confident in my ability.
Okay.
So I wouldn't even say that there was a confidence thing that I needed at that. Oh, my confidence disappeared by the time I was 18, but that's a whole other matter. I think I think at 15 it would be just explore,
Uh-huh.
be open to exploring, I think. I
Like the
was so
world or just
not necessarily the world, but I was so consumed, I think, at 15 with focusing on, am I doing the right GCSEs? Am I doing this will lead to this? And if I do this A level, this will lead to this
wow, very
university
focused.
degree and this.
Academic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, not even I kind of I wanted to write for magazines, so I was like, oh, I need to make sure that I do English, and I need to, and it was all very kind of. But I
Mm.
didn't even know why I wanted to work for magazines. It was just because I think I just enjoyed reading teenage magazines, and so actually, it's only by luck that someone, you remember I mentioned that I tried that city
Hmm.
internship experience and that changed everything. But if I'd given myself the chance to explore other opportunities and meet people and just consider what other things I'm good at and try hobbies, and I might have found myself in a very different path. And, you know, I'm kind of rediscovering things that I enjoy now in my kind of early to mid 30s that would have been quite fun to try then. And who knows where it would
Yeah.
have led me.
Well, hey, you
Yeah.
never know. I mean, that is
Yeah.
something to explore maybe in the future. Maybe that
Might be
should
a
be
crazy
something.
potter. Might have to leave law and start making pots.
Well, maybe that's actually good advice even for Bianca now. Just keep
Yeah, it's
exploring,
true.
right?
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true.
Okay. The question regarding the present is, if you could seek the advice of anyone, who would it be?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. I don't. Advice is a tricky one, because I don't know whose advice I want necessarily because
Yeah.
everyone's living their own path. I would love to, since having my son, I've become a little bit like, oh, all my ancestors and where have
Yeah.
they come from? And it's all very kind of
Yeah.
emotive for me at the moment. So I
Yeah.
would love to kind of speak to my great great grandparents
Yeah.
and hear about the aspirations they had for their future generations and the decisions they maybe not great 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 because they wouldn't have been in a fantastic situation, but maybe my great grandparents or just my grandparents' parents, and
Yeah.
just to understand the decisions that they made for a better life for their children and their grandchildren, their great grandchildren. And I
Right.
think I'd actually find that really inspiring. And I think I'd find that hopefully
Mm.
reassuring
Hmm.
and comforting that I'm
Hmm.
doing something to fulfill their dreams.
Yeah, I love that.
Because
That's nice.
I think I
Yeah.
read something on Instagram the other day that said you are living the wildest dreams of your great
Oh
grandparents.
my
And
gosh.
but for
Yes.
ethnic minorities in particular that
Yes.
migrated to the UK, that is so powerful because
Yeah.
it's so very true. And every struggle that each generation has gone through has become less and less, but they still went
Yes.
through struggles, right? And
Yes.
I
Yeah.
hope that my son will have less struggles than I did. But obviously, my struggles don't compare to my grandparents. So I
Hmm.
think for me, it's just you can sometimes feel very caught up in this game of comparison and have I
Mm.
achieved enough at this stage?
Mm-hmm.
Have I done enough? And my peers are doing this and everyone's doing
Yes.
this and I should be doing this, that, and the other. But actually, if you just kind of take a pause
Yeah.
and look back and say, look at what I've achieved and I've lived my grandparents, my great grandparents' wildest dreams. I've
I
traveled
love that.
these countries and
Yeah.
I'm doing this in my career and I have a
Yeah.
child and it's all yeah, it kind of just puts things into a bit of perspective. And I think for me
100%.
that's probably more what I need now for where I'm at in my life than advice, I think.
Yes, absolutely. I love
I
that.
do. I
No.
mean, I love advice. I love advice, but that.
Well, I'm sure you could get advice from them too. But I mean,
Oh
I just
yes,
love the idea
exactly,
that I
exactly.
love that very much. And I agree with you. I mean, even our parents probably, I think, look back and look at us and say, gosh,
Exactly,
I can't even imagine.
exactly,
Um,
exactly.
okay. So the final question, which is future looking, is whether you have a goal that you would like to share with us that you want to achieve over the next few years.
So in a few years' time, I would love to be heading up a team, a really high functioning, well regarded team, probably in tech, because that's where I'll probably be for the foreseeable future,
Yeah.
um, of lawyers and junior lawyers who really feel empowered to be themselves and
Mhm.
come to work, if we are coming to work or dialing into work, as the most authentic versions of themselves. And
Mm,
if there's been any instance in their careers where they've had their confidence knocked or
mm,
they've questioned whether or not they can bring all parts of themselves
yeah.
to this role as a lawyer, that they know that within my team that that's not a thing basically, and that they should, and I expect them to come with their full selves,
That's
and
so
that in
nice.
doing so we become a more high functioning team. We work better together.
Yeah.
We are able to produce better output as a result of them being more authentic. And in a dream world, people will know about my team or the team that I'm in, even if I'm no longer leading it, and see it as an opportunity for them to really grow and
Mm.
establish themselves or establish a really exciting legal career, and one that doesn't require them to be a cookie cutter lawyer or look like everyone else that either they trained with or that they studied with.
That
Yeah.
sounds amazing. That sounds like the dream job.
Yeah. I mean,
And
that's
you
probably a little
sound
bit
like
too
no,
aspirational,
and
but
you sound no,
we'll
you
see.
it sounds great and it sounds so achievable and you would be the perfect person to lead that. genuinely, because you have
Oh,
all of the leadership skills to do it. You have all of the personality to do it. And I've always said that to you. Ever since, remember when I was a trainee, I was like, you're such a good leader. You are.
that's so
And you have
sweet.
such a great vision. And I think that is such a great goal to work towards. And I would 100% support you in whatever way I can.
Oh,
So
thank you. Thanks,
yeah, you're going to do
Nicole.
it. You're going to do it. I know you will. Thank you so much, Bianca, for being a guest.
Thank
So
you for having
grateful.
me. This
And
is so exciting.
I know. Yay. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the Envisionaire podcast. You are now officially an Envisionaire, so welcome to the club. Make sure that you like and subscribe to this podcast so that you stay up to date on all of our new episodes. And remember, every day offers us a new opportunity to start envisioning and living our best lives.